And how fast can the Sri Lankan economy grow? What measures should we take? As promised, we have invited to our studios a former director of an IMF department, Dr. Shamini Kure, who is also an advisor, a member to the Presidential Advisory Group on Sri Lanka's economic recovery and debt restructuring talks. A very warm welcome to you, Dr. Kure.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
We're talking about, we just heard the President also say that non-competitive firms cannot ask for support from the government. But at the same time, we're talking about an entire economy that went through tough times and are still going through these tough times. So how can we look at a fast economic growth path, and what measures should we take?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. We have to get growth going. We have made some progress with inflation, so that's great. Interest rates are coming down, so this is one way in which the economy can recover. The other way, to the President's point, is that we have to stop the kinds of subsidies that we've been giving, particularly state-owned enterprises, but others as well, through tax exemptions. Now, you know, Sri Lanka has, I think people know, a very low tax ratio. It's about 8%. That's one of the lowest in the world. We've got to get to something like 18% if we are to really be fiscally sustainable. Now, we are not collecting taxes from the very well off. You know, the there's a lot of talk about tax policy, you know, the rates, you know, whether it's 36% or, you know, whatever percentage, but that is not the issue. Well, that is a less of an issue by actually collecting the taxes. We do not collect enough. And so it's a good step that everybody has to have a tax ID number, and the professional bodies are now going to be, you know, within the tax net. But we need to do more to tax the big corporations and not give tax exemptions to BOI or the strategic development projects. This is a really bad idea. So when the President talks about, you know, not helping non-competitive firms, it's also important that we don't try to figure out who's competitive and give them a tax break. What we need to do, the government needs to do, is to create an enabling environment with, you know, reliable electricity, you know, easier access to imports so that they can also export, things like that. You know, those are important for businesses. So I think, you know,
you're talking about the larger taxpayer unit as well. How do we look at this, especially with the Gazette on May 31st? There are questions about how practical it is to implement these introductions. We're talking about 18 plus and also those in across 14 categories, which are welcomed, but at the same time the practicality of it is questioned.
So it is not you know, it is very practical in this sense. Every other country manages to do this. How come we're at the bottom of the pile? So, you know, it's not rocket science, really. You have to staff a large taxpayer unit. This was a commitment under a previous IMF program. It's a commitment under this one. And what the point of a large taxpayer unit is that they, you know, big businesses have very complex structures, right? Rich individuals have income from multiple sources. And a large taxpayer unit is focused with lawyers, accountants who know those businesses very well. So it's harder to evade your taxes. So, you know, the IRD needs to be staffed properly to do that. So, and other countries do this. So it's not, you know, impossible. And everyone in some countries, I mean, let's say the United States, well, everyone has a social security number. That's a tax ID, right? And so there's no reason why every individual over 18 cannot have a tax ID. You know, we could also, you know, use that to actually do income transfers to the poorest. If they have a unique ID number, we can actually do cash transfers much better, right? You can, you know, the taxes can be, you can collect taxes, but you can also transfer income to people. So this is what we need to think about. You know, it's not just for the taxes.
The Sri Lankan economy is estimated to grow at a negative 3% this year and about 1.3% in the following year, in 2024. But the question of governance structures, implementing them, and this is also something that the IMF is looking at. As a former director of a department of the International Monetary Fund, take us through this. What governance measures should we immediately implement in order to ensure a successful implementation of the IMF program and also support our growth and sustainable economic recovery?
So like everything in the IMF program, right? It's not really about the IMF, it's about us, right? This program, we would have to do even if we were on our own. So this is one thing people really, it's not something imposed from the outside. We need to own this. So one of the ways in which governance can be improved is to strengthen institutions. One of the most important things right now in front of Parliament is to strengthen the independence of the central bank. People are a bit afraid of this, but this is important to prevent the abuses that happened in the past. So you have to give a target for the central bank to meet for inflation, but then give them the independence to achieve that target, which they currently do not have. And the very important thing is we need a 2/3 majority to prevent a future case where the central bank is forced to lend to the government. You know, the central bank is not the banker to the government. The business of the central bank is to ensure price stability, not to fund governments. So we have to make very sure that this bill does not, has a provision that prevents the government from getting the central bank to finance deficits. That will ensure some fiscal discipline. And so this is one of the big governance improvements. The large taxpayer unit, it's a governance issue. Not collecting taxes from the well-off is a governance issue. So we've got to strengthen the tax institutions. The other thing we have to do is, frankly, there is a commitment under the program to have a transparency platform, to publish the procurement every 6 months, to list the companies that have benefited from tax exemptions, and to list the individuals that are benefiting from a vehicle import exemptions from the tariffs. Now at the moment they're not importing, but they will soon. So those are the kinds of things we have to have transparency. We got to, there's sort of, things are just hidden. Right. So there's a lot of things that we can do now, without much ado, to put more information out there, because we are not going to attract foreign direct investment unless we create an environment in which things are transparent, there's honest tax administration, right, fair, and also that, the rules of the game are clear and they're stuck to, right? You don't have arbitrary, some politician interferes in something. No foreign direct investor wants to deal with these things, so we have to realize that.
Very quickly, I'd also like to talk about the import restrictions. Government is talking about relaxing or lifting some of the restrictions on many items. But at the same time, while that is welcome, we're talking about Forex, the position, Sri Lanka's foreign exchange position. Will this put more pressure on the government coffers? What is your observation here on Sri Lanka moving ahead in restricting imports?
Well, so we had to do this in the middle of a crisis. The crisis, actually the balance of payments situation has improved. As you can see, the currency has strengthened. So absolutely, the import restrictions need to come out, and soon. There's no need to wait. It's not going to affect, if it does affect the exchange rate, it might weaken a bit. This is a flexible exchange rate, and the central bank will ensure price stability. It's not the business of the central bank to control the exchange rate, right? But the most important thing to realize is that, look, our exports it used to be 39% of GDP in the year 2000. In the year 2021, it's at 17.7%. That is an abysmally low number for a supposedly open economy like Sri Lanka. We need to be in the 30-40% category, right? So if you allow more imports, the exporters actually can export into higher value-added items much easier, because today's supply chains are such that you have to constantly import and export so that you add value and then you export something to a higher quality market. So we really need to sort of think in terms of the volume of trade, not just the balance. You can have large volumes of trade. That's how you grow. So it's not about, the net position becoming worse. It's whether the gross numbers, that is the total exports, total imports, are, growing in volume. That's what's important.
Thank you very much for your time and for sharing your expertise with us, Dr. Shamini Kure.
Thank you, Indira.